Thank you, Tertia. Tertia, you said everyone can use the selfie for verification. So I want to tell you guys a quick story. About 5 years ago, my grandmother, she is 98, her brick Nokia phone went on the blink, and she was very upset because she had to get a touchscreen phone, and she would never adapt to the technology. So that was when she was about 93. She got a touchscreen phone and she learned how to swipe, and then she got onto WhatsApp and a whole new world opened for her. She started to WhatsApp all of her friends, and in the past month, she created her first WhatsApp group at the age of 98. And it was just me and her in that group. And she called it Grandma. But everyone can learn how to use these technologies. So, a different kind of ransomware, also known as how to train your pigeon. Think about this for a moment. When was the last time that you clicked on the I agree button when presented with the terms and conditions on a website? When was the last time that you actually read the terms and conditions? We live in a world where we have to give consent multiple times a day, but the crowd here, you're legal professionals, I'm pretty sure you read it every time. It's only in Joburg where they don't read it, eh? I can tell you one thing, I didn't read the terms and conditions when Marie asked me to be part of this Legal Tech Talk. I didn't realize it was 12 events. Last year at Legal Talk, I spoke about ransomware and how you can protect your firm's data. But today I want to chat about a different kind of ransomware. The scary thing is that on a day-to-day basis, we agree to have our data ransomed. But before I go on, let's talk about this concept of informed consent. What is informed consent? For someone to give informed consent to something, we need to satisfy 3 conditions. Firstly, it must be an infrequent decision. You cannot give informed consent if you have to do it 100 times a day. Secondly, the risks must be visceral. What does that mean? You need to be able to create a picture in your mind of what the risks are. You need to be able to understand it. And thirdly, the clicker must work. The harm must be potentially great. And only when we satisfy all 3 those conditions can we give informed consent. Now, let's test this quickly. We've all undergone a medical procedure at some stage in our lives. Is it an infrequent decision? Yes. Are the risks visceral? Can we understand what they're going to do to us? Yes, hopefully. Is the harm potentially great? Well, on the one end of the scale, you might have minor complications. On the other side, you might die. It's okay. That's why those of you in medical negligence have a job. But what happens when we click these buttons, when we agree to these terms and conditions? Is it an infrequent decision? No, we do it 100 times a day. Do we understand the risks? Not really. And is the harm potentially great? Well, it's not that you can die, but it's more like death through 1,000 cuts every day. Whenever I talk about data safety, I want you to realize that this little device that you carry in your pocket not only tracks you horizontally, wherever you go via a GPS, but also vertically through a barometer. This device tracks whether you're on the 13th floor of a high-rising building. And now you might ask, why do I care? Did you give consent to the NSA to track you and to track on which floor of a high-rising building you are when you started to play Angry Birds? I guess not. Whenever I talk about data privacy, people ask me, but why should I care? I'm a good citizen. I'm not a terrorist. I don't do anything bad. My question for those people are, what does our Constitution say? Everyone has a right to privacy. Think about your right to privacy when you go to the restrooms. You're not doing anything wrong, but you've got a right to be private. Think about your right to privacy when you draw your cross in a democratic election. You've got a right to privacy. Let's talk about buttons. What can you do with a button? You can make it green, you can make it shiny, you can make it bold. You can place it directly under a user's thumb where you know you will click. But just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. We think designers spend their lives to build us beautiful websites, apps that are shiny, but instead design is used to manipulate our actions on a day-to-day basis. Design is power. And with each design decision that they make, a certain outcome becomes more and more possible. Look at this, the agree button, bright, shiny, green, under your thumb. Did any of you notice that you can decline? Plain text. Now, you might think that this is something that Silicon Valley invented. I present to you Professor B.F. Skinner. Does anyone know who this guy is? There's one hand there. Professor B.F. Skinner, the father of behaviorism. Now, when most of you think of behaviorism, you probably think about Pavlov and his dogs, where he used to feed his dogs every day, ring a bell. And after a while, he would just ring the bell, and the dogs would start to salivate. Breakfast is in half an hour. Skinner did something different. He focused on rewards and consequences, the carrot and the stick. What he did is he found out that he could train pigeons to do what he wanted to do by giving them food, a reward. So he would start off by giving the pigeons food for any movement that they do that is close to what he wants them to do. Later, it would become more specific, like peck 10 times on a dot, then you'll get your food. Later on, peck 20 times on a dot, and then you'll get your food. So what did Skinner try to do here? Didn't train the pigeons to crack iPhone screens, wasn't trying to replace legal secretaries. It was in the 1930s. You're not going to believe the story, I promise you. Skinner got a contract from the Department of Defense in America, and he wanted to train pigeons to fly missiles. He wanted to load these pigeons into missiles and use them as a kind of an early GPS system. So how would it work? Kind of a democracy. 3 pigeons in a missile, they've got a viewport. They can see the ship that they want to blow up. And if 2 out of the 3 peck on the same dot at the same time, it would steer the missile. Now, I know there are some of you who don't believe me about this. What I'm going to show you now is actual footage that Mr. Skinner took of a pigeon pecking on a screen, guiding it towards an enemy warship. Luckily for the pigeons, the Department of Defense canceled this project before a serious number of them died kamikaze style, mostly because of newer technologies towards the end of the war. Now you might be asking, how do I bring this all back to legal technology and accepting the terms and conditions, the buttons that we so gladly click? Silicon Valley used Skinner's research to change all of our behaviors. The reward that we get when we click on that button, I accept, is that we can play Angry Birds, Candy Crush, and Farmville. And it has affected every one of us. You think you are immune because you're in the legal profession? How often do you read the actual agreements that comes across your desk in detail? How often does your clients come into your office and you present them with a piece of paper and they just sign it because they believe you? They want to get to the reward. To illustrate this, I'm going to go through two very, very quick case studies. The first one was a big firm, conveyancing firm, and they wanted to change their conveyancing system. So they followed process, they gave notice to their old conveyancing provider and said, give us an extract of all the data, we want to import it into our new conveyancing system. The old provider said, check your agreement. We won't do that. They were left with one of three options. Either stay with the old provider, go to the new provider without any data, or try and recapture everything. They decided to stay with the old provider at the end of the day. They couldn't move. Second one happened to us here at AJS. We signed a client from a competitor. That client had to give 2 months' notice. According to the contract, the bookkeeper gave the notice. Within an hour, the old service provider cut down all access to the system. Imagine if all of a sudden you don't have access to your system, you can't send out invoices at the end of the month, no access to your files. This is what I call a different kind of ransomware. How we ransom our data on a daily basis without reading the fine print. If you look at, for example, AJS's terms and conditions, you'll find a clause that says the data remains the property of the client. At the very least, you should know three things. Firstly, who owns my data? Secondly, how will my data be used? And thirdly, how will my data be shared? My take-home message for you today is to be very careful when you click on accept. Both when you play Candy Crush or Farmville or Angry Birds, but also be careful. In the environment, in the day and age where we live in, we have to click accept every time we use software. And if you just click accept without knowing the consequences, you might be the pigeon in the missile about to blow up a warship and yourself in the process. Thank you for your time.